There's a simple and effective marketing tool that most businesses are underutilizing, or sometimes not even using at all. I'm talking about email marketing. We send and receive hundreds of emails each week, but how often do we really spend time thinking about how we can use email to sell our products or build customer relationships? Today's guest is going to tell us how we can change that. I'm Jane Singer, and welcome to A Seat at the Table, where we sit down with industry leaders and innovators who share their insights and expertise so that we can build strong, more successful businesses. Meet Scott Cohen, an email marketing and automation veteran who has worked with Fortune 500 companies as well as startups to use data-driven strategies to turn around underperforming accounts. In this podcast, Scott will be sharing where marketers might be leaving money on the table when it comes to email marketing, benchmarks for email frequency and response rates, the importance of reaching the right people, not just more people, and what might be next for email marketing. In order to create a successful marketing program, you first need to have experienced people on your team. However, finding these people is not always easy, especially in highly competitive markets. That's why many leading companies turn to Asianet consultants. Asianet has a legacy of being able to fulfill even those difficult-to-fill roles. Their global network, built over 3 decades, gives them a key advantage in finding the right people for the right positions. You can learn more about them at asianetconsultants.com. I'll leave a link in the show notes over on our website at seat.fm. Meanwhile, let's sit down with Scott and find out how we can use our email to drive sales. Scott, I'm really happy to have you here on A Seat at the Table. I think what you're talking about is so relevant to everybody listening to us, and that's people in 130 countries around the world. But as we were talking about before, everybody is online, everybody is using email. Unfortunately, not everybody is using email to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to have you here and have you enlighten us.
Happy to be here. Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't think about until something goes wrong, usually. But yeah, it's so much potential. So happy to be here to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, perhaps we can start by just give us your opinion on where do you see marketers leaving money on the table these days when it comes to email marketing? And I know that's a big topic, but everyone is using email, as we said, particularly, well, of course, for communication, but also for marketing. And yet maybe people are not using it as efficiently as they might be, or overlooking things. What are you seeing? I mean, you have expertise, really deep expertise in this field.
It's amazing the number of brands and companies I've worked with over the years where, some of them have their ducks in a row, right? In terms of email, they're really thinking about the touch points in terms of a holistic customer journey. And then you get a lot of companies, bigger companies even, that they don't even have a welcome program, right? They don't even have, onboarding. They don't have post-purchase beyond order confirmation, shipping confirmation. They don't have, if they're e-commerce, they don't have cart abandon set up, or they have a single email set up there. They don't have, fully operationalized programs, really. And so there's a lot of the work I do even now is getting those, what I consider foundational pieces in place, that welcome program, the cart abandon program, that post-purchase program. Next logical product is a big one, right? If you're in the B2B space and maybe you're a SaaS company that has a free trial, a lot of them don't have a really fleshed out trial upsell into a paid program, or, if they don't, convert to paid in that time period, no free trial recovery, things like that. So there's a lot of those. There's a lot of money being left on the table in a lot of places.
Wow, it really sounds like it. And a lot of the things you mentioned, I hadn't really even thought about myself. I mean, certainly it seems somewhat obvious to have a welcome email if somebody buys your product or joins your program or whatever. Typically, a company might send that out. They may have to send somebody a login or a password or a shipping confirmation or something like that. But, the sense of being able to further market to people, as you're mentioning, for example, next logical product or service that you might buy, that's really interesting. I mean, how might a company utilize that? Can you give us some examples?
I mean, the obvious example, and this I think dates me a little bit, is the printer and ink model, right?
Okay.
When you when you sell a printer, you're not in the printer business, you're in the ink business. And so if you get them to buy a printer, you're getting them to buy ink. Or you've seen it before if you've purchased a laptop online, then you start selling accessories for the laptop. Maybe it's a monitor, maybe it's a keyboard and mouse, maybe it is a printer. I mean, I've got one back. You don't see it because of my virtual background, but I've got one back there, and I guess I'm one of the few people that still has a printer these days, or feels like that. But I worked in a previous life at a mattress company, and so it was, if you sold a mattress, now go sell them pillows and sheets. If you are, it really becomes interesting in that, if you're selling a toothbrush, now if you sell toothpaste, go sell toothpaste. There's a lot of options there that make sense. When I was in the mattress company, I always said my vision was to have a complete bedroom that is nothing but this brand. Right.
Right.
So make sure they have a mattress, make sure they have a base, make sure they have the pillows, the sheets, the duvet, everything, that they have a complete company bedroom. And then we move on to the other bedrooms in the house. I mean, everyone in my family has a mattress from that company, right? So it makes, like, you get that sort of jealousy factor as well.
Mm.
So it's just one of those, like, how do you may have those people that are just sort of fans and they're trying you out, and then you sort of turn them into true believers if you just fill out the repertoire.
It's interesting how you're framing that, because it's sort of the way people sold things typically in a physical store, right?
Yeah.
Someone would walk into the store, like you're saying, to buy a mattress. You'd say, gee, would you like some sheets to go with that? Or do you need a duvet? Online, you don't really think like that, right? You would just assume the person is going to look around, see everything they need, and they buy what they've already determined they want. So you've already gotten to that final decision. And I think it's interesting how you're pointing out that actually you can go back to people online and try to cross sell, upsell, or
Yep.
whatever the correct term is for that. I think that's a really interesting concept that I hadn't thought of. And, I think perhaps a lot of people listening to this haven't thought of. I mean, if you guys have thought of this, leave me a comment on it. Maybe I'm the only one who hasn't thought about it.
Oh yeah. I mean, and email is really a facilitator for that, right? I mean, you've got, with the purchase, you've got an email address, you've got a physical address, there's it, email is really the way to keep the engine running. And, obviously you could talk to other channels, of course. I mean, I'm an email guy, but I know the value of other channels. And,
Right.
you could get your, paid ads to do retargeting for those folks for some targeted, testing into targeted, but usually your paid advertising is really focused on that acquisition. So email is uniquely positioned to help both on that initial conversion, but also the retention as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that there are people who are doing that. I think there's a point of confusion, so to speak, around that. And that is where people wonder how much is too much. And I think you have people who sort of skew from one end of the spectrum to the other. You have people who are just emailing you literally multiple times a day, right? I mean, every time you open your email, it's like how you know your email is working because you got an email from this company. And if you don't see it, you're like, oh, I wonder if my connection's down. And then you have other people, right, who are just sending something maybe every 6 months. From your point of view, maybe you're happy not to have an overloaded inbox, but from a marketing point of view, that might be too infrequently. From your experience, how do you benchmark things? And I know it's different for different companies and different products, but typically, how might a company approach that?
Well, every 6 months is definitely too little. Let's put it that way. That's obviously a drastic example, but I've always said that you could mail 4 times a day if it was relevant. Do I
Okay.
recommend it? No. Most 99.99999% of companies couldn't do that, right? It's just like you could not create relevance 4 times a day. You just can't.
Right.
And it doesn't scale very well. So there are some companies that pull it off and can do that, but it's rare. Typically, depending on the type of service you offer, the product you offer, the buying cycle that goes into it. Obviously, lower priced items, there's a shorter consideration curve. Higher priced items, there's a longer consideration curve. It's I would say, used to be you could get away with a monthly newsletter, right? at sort of a minimum, but you have to consider I always think about your own inbox and how
Right.
crazy it is. If you only mail once in a month, odds are people are just going to miss it, right? I mean, you'll get some people that see it and go, "Oh, great, finally it's here again." And maybe if you set it up where there's an expectation of on the first of the month, it's our newsletter, and there's some really cool stuff in there. But twice a month is probably the minimum, I would say. Just to keep top of mind, because there's always that. I always say email works both, inside the email to get people to your website, but then also there is that sort of branding touch, right? If you see the from name of your brand or your company, whatever it might be, and just having it there is enough to spur action or keep you top of mind. So obviously don't overwhelm people. If you're relevant, great. If not, back off. But don't just go, "Oh, we're just annoying people," because there's always like the one person who's really loud no matter what you do, and they're going to be angry. So it's like if you ever looked at a data set, you always throw out the outliers, right? So
Right.
you're always
Right.
talking about the middle, the silent, was it the silent 98%, right? So you're always focused there. So find that balance between, can you be relevant and brand forward? And find and test into it as well. You could say, okay, we've been sending twice a month for years. Let's take a subset of people and send them a third message. Do unsubscribes go up, or do they stay about the same? And revenue will flow, or whatever your conversion metric might be. Maybe it's appointments, maybe it's other things, but revenue will flow from that third email.
You made some really good points there. And I think that, if we start with the first one, I think your point about the fact that whether people respond to an email, you have a branding element because people see your brand name or your company name or your name in their inbox, and they might not even be reacting to it, but you're keeping the brand alive, so to speak, or the product alive in their minds. And so often you see something and you're thinking about it. And it takes a long time, right, to go from I'm aware of it to I'm actually buying it, a far longer timeline than anybody in marketing is ever comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, just a great example of that. Several years ago in a previous life, I went to my data analytics team and went, okay, I want to just see, because we sent a lot of the same email every week, right? It was contact lenses. So, you were just trying to be there, get people to buy their next set of contact lenses. And I went, okay, give me everyone who received one of our emails last week and then converted in any channel within 48 hours. I don't care if it's email last touch. I don't care what channel. And then break it down by people who opened the email and didn't. And 40% of the revenue that came in from that group came from people who didn't open the email.
Wow.
And so I went, there's that branding effect, right? Of they just saw the email and went, "Oh yeah, let me go order contact lenses." And so don't discount the non-engagers. You need to look at that holistic view of, did they convert in the time period that would be reasonable to, you got the email, 24 hours, 48 hours, maybe it's 7 days of a look back, but see how they convert and then go, all right, my audience did engage, maybe not directly with the email, but they went and bought. And that's all we care about, right? Is that they went and bought.
Yeah, I really think that it's great that you brought that up because so much of marketing is sort of a leap of faith, right? You can't see it, touch it, feel it, even measure it the way you want to. It's hard to sometimes understand what exact action triggered that sale or that conversion. You just see that, well, if I keep sending this, I keep getting sales. And people then try to make that connection, that correlation, which isn't always true. And it's good that you're bringing that up, that there's just a lot of different touch points and you don't know which is the one that's going to actually lead to an action, yet you
Yep.
feel obliged to analyze it, right? And
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there's going to be emails that work and emails that don't, right? And even when you test, most of the time it's going to be a flat result, right? That the test didn't win, didn't lose. Rarely, I always say, to my clients and to my teams when I was brand side, like, we're looking for singles and doubles. We don't need home runs. Just keep just keep the runs moving, right, over time. And it's small incremental things that you're looking for.
So from that point of view, then, how much does it pay? And I know that it's different with every kind of product, obviously, but in general, how much does it pay for a marketer to really, really work to craft a certain message or content for an email versus figuring that it's really just about keeping your name in front of people and a certain number of people are going to buy? So, like, why kill yourself on that?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, you don't want to just do throwaway copy, right? But there's or throwaway content, I mean, there's still that if people engage and then you just disregard the quality of the email, that's when you're going to turn them off, right? So there's no such thing as perfection, I would
Right.
say, right? But there's also, I would never go to a client and say, don't just throw a bunch of gibberish in there and that's all that matters. They're just going to see it and they're not going to care. No, I mean, it's like any other channel where, you want that touch point to look good, right? But, it could be that if you're leveraging video or testimonials, right, that honestly, the ones that perform better, are the ones that don't look polished,
Right.
right? That
Right.
that look more like literally, holding up a phone and going, "Hey,
Right.
I'm doing this," right? Those are the ones that do better than the really polished things. But it's a touch point, right? So the from name has to be you, the subject line has to be something that draws attention. Whether it actually does or not is another story. Um, I mean, the number of emails I get is staggering today. And Jane, I'm sure it's the same for you, that just so many emails, which is why you have to stick out, right?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
when you get the privilege of the open, then you have to go, okay, they're in the email. Are we going to be able to convince them or make them, maybe it's for post-purchase, it's making them feel good about the purchase they just made, right? To avoid buyer's remorse. That there's you can't just throw away brand touch points. So, I would say there's a balance between, you know, getting it out the door, because I say perfect is the enemy of good. Like, you need to get
Right.
stuff out the door. But you also can't just disregard it and just hope that if, I mean, you've probably seen it where people just mess up or they
Right.
offend someone or something like that. Like, you don't want to do that.
Right.
Unless being offensive is your brand, which there are some brands out there that actually do it really well. But yeah, it's a balancing act.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think those are very good points because you're right. People sometimes get caught up in trying to be too perfect, and either they never get anything out the door, as you're saying, or it comes off almost as too corporatey and in a sense insincere. I don't know if that's the right choice of words, but I think you catch what I'm saying.
Yeah,
And on the other hand, if you have something that's sloppy, it takes away from your brand credibility. It does have to
absolutely.
look professional, and it has to in some way have people open it and feel this reflects the quality of the brand in some way or another. um, you're right, just throwing a bunch of spam at people, sooner or later people are going to hit that
They're going
old
to mark you as
unsubscribe.
spam.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
If you're
exactly.
lucky, they'll hit unsubscribe. That
Right.
likely it'll just hit spam, and that's worse.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. So I think those are very good points. And it is difficult in something like email marketing or in any kind of marketing to give people the kind of hard and fast benchmarks, guidelines, guardrails that people want to make them feel confident that the time and the money that they're spending on this is being well spent and well directed. But I think that you've brought up some important points on that. Now, if you look at it, a lot of people look at any kind of marketing nowadays as from the point of view of reach, of more is more, right? And particularly, internet marketing, email marketing, social media has made reaching more a lot easier, right?
Mhm.
You can reach a ton of people and you don't have to pay more to do that. But is that really ideal? In other words, people think the more people I reach, the more likely it is that someone will buy. But does that really hold up? Does that equation hold up? Is it just a numbers game, or should marketers be looking at this with a different criteria? We're going to take a quick break now, and then we'll be right back.
We were hiring when we were making 50 to 100K monthly losses.
And why? Welcome to episode 1.
I can't think of a single founder who's been around for a decent amount of time in business who hasn't had their tunnel of year. This was that year. We're going to be okay, yeah, Sheree. Some are going to hear this and think, you TDP. But hear me out. You only have to do the math to understand that very soon we were $500,000 down.
It's another balancing act, right? So, I mean, email has really good reach. The issue you run into is email, like SMS as well. There are laws, especially, you talked about 130 countries around the world that are listening to this. The US is really the only place where spam is legal, if you can think about it, right? So,
Wow.
It's as long as you have an opt-out and, you follow the rules of CAN spam, the joke is that you can spam people in the United States. When you get into the Canadian Castle Law, you get into GDPR in the EU, you really, like, privacy is a much bigger thing, outside of the US. And, opt-in is a requirement, in most places around the world. Here, I always say that the US is an opt-out country. So, we see this all the time. People want to take shortcuts. They want to buy lists. They want to go out and just expand that reach beyond what, really is wise. That just doesn't work very well anymore. I mean, it just doesn't, right? I mean, it's the sort of the needle in the haystack of that one company pulled it off. So now everyone's going to do it. And you go, no. So email really is more of a relationship builder, and you're getting intent. So partnering with the reach, the bigger reach channels, like social channels and paid advertising, where they're driving traffic to the site, and then the site converts to email, they convert to SMS, and then respecting those two channels in terms of that relationship. You don't get people to opt out, right? But you just don't. You want to respect the list you've built and use that for your reach there, because people, at least had some intent at the beginning. They don't just, show up and go, oh, some of them might show up and just be looking for a promo code. Let's be fair.
Right.
I do it. Or they might be throwing something in the cart to get a discount code for cart abandon. Customers are getting a lot smarter. My wife does it all the time. I think by osmosis, she's a reasonable email marketer after all these years of watching me do it. But it's just, you want to be able to, the more is more, right? That's where we get into how often do you send, right? So you get those brand touch points in the inbox. It really is kind of a hard balancing act, because if you have budget, you can hammer people with paid advertising all day long. With email, you can add people to your list all day long, but at some point, if you are a bad actor, you can get blocked, right? You get blocked, you have trouble getting into the inbox. And the issue with just spamming people or buying lists is that if you do that enough, it hurts your ability to deliver email to the people that want to receive it. So there's always that sort of protectionist view of, I'm not one of these, there's sort of the deliverability people in the space that are very hardcore, like, set active inactives and really low. And I'm kind of in the middle of, don't just mail everybody, but, maybe set the parameters a little wider.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. I think that most sophisticated marketers hopefully have moved beyond the point of just trying to, spray and pray, reach as many people as you can and figure who knows, right?
Yep.
People will, when you're talking to someone who's a newbie, so to speak, and you're talking about, well, who should you reach? They'll always want to reach the biggest possible number of people. And they'll tell you, Jane, you never know. And you feel like saying, you pretty much know.
I mean, if your list is 5,000 people, sending to 5,000 people isn't a big deal. If your list
Right.
is 5 million people,
Right.
it's time to get smart, right?
Right. Right.
And break them out, because by then you'll have enough data that okay, these people have purchased. You should know what they've purchased. These people haven't purchased and they're not engaged at all. And we got them on the list 3 years ago and they haven't engaged in a year, which, if you think about it, with iOS 15 from a couple years ago, if these people are on Apple devices and they're using Apple Mail, they're likely opening, but they're actually not opening. So
Oh,
there's
really?
yeah, so because mail privacy protection has hidden and sort of blurred over data to the point where they're actually auto opening. They're showing an auto open because he opens a pixel, right? So
Right.
they're auto opening the email when it comes in, not necessarily when the person actually, if they do open it at all. So if you've been doing email over the last couple of years, you've seen your open rates do this, and that's not actually true.
Right.
So it's like I said, if you got 5,000 people on your list, it depending on what you sell, like maybe you're a furniture company, or you sell huge 3D printers or something like that, right? Maybe then you even then you would get smart. But if you're a new sort of e-com business and you're just starting up and you got 5,000 people on your list, it's probably not. You probably don't need to start getting smarter about it for a little while. That's what I'm
Right.
trying to say.
Okay. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And now, when you look at email marketing, I mean, as you're saying, it's been around a long time. It's really easy for most people to use. What do you see as the next big thing coming within that? Or is it something that just is simple and that's the elegance of it? And that's why it's going to ultimately outperform or outlast other forms of marketing?
I mean, I like to say that, I've been doing this for 15 years now
Wow.
almost. And I like to say that the strategy hasn't fully changed. The tactics certainly have, and how you would accomplish those, right? So the big thing, I mean, AI is everywhere, right?
Right,
So,
right.
we see AI coming into play in the email space with, some platforms are working on AI custom journeys. So they're going to go, hey, based on what we know, we're going to build out automated flows with AI and the content that comes within it. So there's a huge content play that's coming in to effect, and that's across all channels, but certainly with email. There's automation play that I think we're definitely in its infancy, its nascency right now, but that's, I think, where sort of the next step is going to be for all channels. It's going to hit email, it's going to hit SMS. I think email, SMS, and push as sort of a triumvirate of CRM channels is really a big, with apps and everything else. When you're over in East Asia, a lot of people don't have email, but they have their phones, right? So
Right.
really getting phone first, I think mobile first email's really pushed that. It really helped push that along. I personally hate SMS, but dang
Yes.
it, the channel works. I tell you what, the channel works. So always remove your focus group of one.
Right, right, right. Exactly. That's a
and
really
and
good point.
yeah, it's interesting, but I think AI is probably the next big thing. Customer data platforms and the evolution of those, and sort of the analytics piece is going to get really interesting. We've had, what has it been, big data, and then it was CDPs, and then there's all these names for it, for largely, hey, we have a lot of data, how do we use it?
Right,
And I think we
right.
just get more and more data, and there's sort of the balance of get everything and just get what you plan to use. Because I think that's a big thing, especially like in Canada, for example, with Castle and I think GDPR as well. They'll go after you if you have data points that you can't prove that you're using. Or you go like, and
Interesting.
the whole right to be forgotten, and that's true in California as well now. That customers can call you up and be like, take me off your list and remove everything you know about me, right? So um, it really is, don't just collect data for the sake of collecting data. Go, I'm going to collect this data because I plan to use it, in segmentation, in content, in things of that sort. So those are the big things I see really coming down the pipe. I'm keeping my eye on AI and what it actually will mean from a functional perspective, because people, Chat GPT is great, but if you can get don't just accept what it spits out. That's my concern as well. There's sort of my concern is sort of a race to mediocrity where you have these companies that are just too darn busy and be like, just put it in Chat GPT and then throw it in an email. And Chat GPT won't understand your unique brand voice. So, take it as a starting point. It's great. Believe me, I'm an old copywriter. I've used it. Like, hey, I just need to get unblocked. Just get me unblocked. Oh, that's great. Let me take that and run with it. And yeah, it's everything. It's. I always say there's two answers I give. It depends, and it's a balance, right?
Right.
All things in moderation.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that needed to be said because right now the hype cycle around AI is sort of off the charts and people think it can do everything, including the dishes. When in reality, like you're saying, it's a tool and you have to use it strategically. And you're
Yep.
right, it can't capture that unique voice, that unique brand sort of DNA that really sets you apart in a competitive market. But like you were saying also, it's very good when you're looking at a blank page and the clock is ticking and like literally you can't think of how to get started on that particular email or marketing copy. And it just sort of, it's like jumper cables, so to speak.
Yep. I would be happy if AI could do dishes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Well, Scott, you've shared so many great things. I mean, I've learned a tremendous amount in this short conversation. I think a lot of the people listening to this have also. How can people connect with you? I'm sure people would want to reach out to you, ask about what they're working on, and perhaps talk about how you can support their company. Where can they find you?
Well, I work for Inbox Army, so you can find us at inboxarmy.com, and then
Okay.
you can find me on LinkedIn. It's whatever it is /Scott Cohen 13.
Okay.
So find me there, reach out, and happy to chat. I'm always happy to chat about email and other things.
Well, perfect. I'm going to include all of those links in the show notes. You can find that over on our website at seat.fm. So when you look at the podcast from Scott, you'll be able to see right at the bottom all of those links. So it'll be really easy to connect with him. And Scott, I just want to thank you again for joining us today. I know you're busy, so thank you so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.